Two people can open the gospel to the same healing encounter and leave with entirely different possessions. The first watches the sufferer. He studies every movement. How did the person approach Jesus? What words were spoken? Was the voice bold or trembling? Was there a touch, a command, or an act of obedience? He searches the scene for a pattern he can reproduce. The second watches Jesus. He asks, "What does this reveal about the healer? What does his response tell me about the Father? What happens when human suffering stands before divine love?" The first may leave with a method. The second leaves with a revelation. This distinction matters because a method can become a burden. You begin measuring your posture. You examine the volume of your prayer. You wonder whether you spoke the correct words, felt enough confidence, or acted at precisely the right moment. Before long, your attention is fixed upon your own performance rather than upon Christ. You are no longer resting in the healer. You are inspecting yourself. That is not the foundation of faith. Look carefully at the gospel record. Jesus does not minister through one mechanical pattern. In one encounter, he touches. In another, he speaks. In another, he forgives. One sufferer cries openly. Another reaches for him quietly. Some are carried by friends. Others are approached by Jesus before they make a request. The responses differ, yet the one responding does not change. The encounters are revelations before they are instructions. They do teach us how faith responds, but first they show us whom faith encounters. Therefore, as we walk through these scenes, do not ask only, "What did this person do to receive?" Ask the greater question, "What did Jesus reveal about the Father when this person came near?" 4 discoveries will emerge. First, Jesus sees the person whom suffering has reduced to a condition. Second, he receives faith in different forms, freeing us from the tyranny of imitation. Third, he restores more than the body. He confronts shame, fear, isolation, and the loss of belonging. Fourth, he acts with an authority that does not strain, bargain, or retreat. When these truths become clear, you will stop treating the miracles as distant exhibitions to admire. You will begin to recognize the character of the living Christ. Your confidence will no longer rest upon mastering a technique, but upon knowing the one to whom faith reaches. But before we examine what Jesus did for individual sufferers, we must establish something foundational: why his actions can be trusted to reveal the heart and will of God. Jesus is not merely a worker of wonders standing between a reluctant God and desperate humanity. He is the Son making the Father known. His words reveal the Father's will. His actions reveal the Father's heart. His response to suffering is not a private kindness that must be separated from God. It is divine compassion made visible in human history. Do you see what this changes? Many believers confess that God is powerful while privately wondering whether he is willing. They believe he can heal, but they approach him as though compassion must be awakened, reluctance must be overcome, and mercy must be purchased by enough prayer. Their mouths call him Father, but their hearts approach him as strangers trying to gain an audience. Then Jesus enters the gospel record, and that false picture begins to collapse. He does not present divine life as something locked in heaven while suffering humanity struggles to reach it. In him, divine life comes near. Authority moves toward weakness. Compassion crosses the distance. The need does not create willingness in God. The need encounters the willingness already revealed in Christ. This is why your confidence cannot rest upon personal merit. You do not earn divine compassion by arranging a perfect spiritual record. You do not qualify by reaching the correct emotional temperature. You do not make redemption more complete by struggling harder. Christ directs your attention away from your worthiness and toward his finished work, his standing, and his character. The question, then, is not simply, does God possess enough power? Every believer answers yes. The deeper question is, what does the character revealed in Jesus tell me about how that power approaches suffering? Power without revealed character can still leave you afraid. You may believe a king has wealth and yet wonder whether he will receive you. But when the Son makes the Father known, power is no longer an abstract possibility. It has a face. It has a voice. It moves with compassion. Imagine an heir whose name appears in a settled inheritance, yet who has never read the document. The provision is real. The ownership is established. But ignorance keeps that heir living as though nothing belongs to him. The problem is not that the estate is empty. The problem is that his understanding has never been opened. So it is with many believers. They do not first need greater noise, greater strain, or greater emotion. They need revelation. They need their consciousness governed by Christ rather than by fear, by what he has revealed rather than by what pain predicts. Healing faith begins when you stop imagining the Father as the obstacle. Now, with his willingness established, watch what happens when Jesus meets a man whom suffering has reduced to a condition, a stigma, and a name no human being was meant to carry. The first discovery is this: Jesus sees the person whom suffering has reduced to a condition. A man with leprosy comes to him carrying more than disease. He carries the distance disease has placed between himself and others. He carries the looks, the caution, the closed doors, the loss of ordinary human nearness. His body has become a public announcement. People no longer see the man first. They see the condition. That is what suffering can do. It can take one part of your experience and make it appear to be the whole of your identity. You were once known by your work, your laughter, your relationships, your hopes. Then the diagnosis came, and suddenly every conversation began with your body. The condition became a label, and the label threatened to become a name. But Jesus sees the man. Notice the question beneath the man's appeal. He does not chiefly doubt Christ's ability. He says, in effect, "You can make me clean, if you are willing." The uncertainty lies not in the power, but in the willingness. He knows Jesus has authority. He does not yet know whether that authority will move towards someone like him. Then Jesus does something that reveals the Father. He reaches out and touches him. Do not hurry past the touch. Jesus could have spoken from a distance. His word did not require physical contact to possess authority, yet he crossed the space others had maintained. Before this man could return to ordinary human fellowship, the hand of Jesus declared that he was not repulsive to God. The touch was not merely a method of healing, it was a revelation of worth. The condition had altered the man's life, but it had not canceled his value. It had influenced how society approached him, but it had not rewritten how God saw him. It had created isolation, but it had not created rejection in the heart of Christ. The formula-centered reader immediately asks, does this mean touch is always required? But that question misses the greater revelation. The important fact is not that Jesus used his hand in every encounter he did not. The important fact is that human brokenness did not intimidate him, contaminate him, or drive him away. He moved toward the man. Perhaps suffering has made you ashamed of your own body. Perhaps weakness has made you feel disqualified, burdensome, or spiritually unclean. Perhaps people speak about you as though your condition is the truest thing about you. Hear what this encounter declares. Pain may cover your sense of worth, but it cannot cancel the worth God recognizes. You are not merely the body's report. You are not the name of the disease. You are not the fear others attach to your future. Christ sees the person beneath the condition, and his compassion crosses the distance shame has created. Jesus did not merely confront the disease. He crossed the distance it had created. Yet even this sacred touch must not become a universal technique. In the encounters that follow, faith will come to Jesus boldly and quietly, personally and through friends, with strong confidence and with scarcely articulated hope. The forms will change. The healer will remain the same. The second discovery is this: the healer is consistent, but the people who come to him are not. Their knowledge differs, their confidence differs, their access differs, even the manner in which they ask differs. Yet Jesus does not demand that every sufferer sound alike before he will respond. Consider the centurion. He does not ask Jesus to enter his house, create an atmosphere, or place a hand upon the sick servant. He understands authority. He knows that a true command carries the rank of the one who gives it, so he asks for a word. That is, vocal faith clear, reasoned, and confident. Then consider the suffering woman in the crowd. She does not stand publicly and deliver a fearless appeal. She comes quietly, reaches through the press of people, and touches his garment. Her faith is not expressed like the centurion's, but it still moves toward Jesus. That is desperate faith, trembling, concealed, yet determined. Now look at the paralytic. He does not reach Jesus by his own strength. Friends carry him. They confront the obstacle, open a way, and place him before Christ. Their conviction takes the form of labor. They believe enough to carry what he cannot carry for himself. That is faith shared through love. Call it borrowed faith, if you will not faith stolen from another, but confidence placed around a helpless person until he is brought within reach of the healer. Then there is the man beside the pool. He does not begin with a triumphant confession. He has lived so long inside disappointment that his answer explains why change has not occurred. Yet Jesus approaches him. The initiative begins not with a dramatic display from the man, but with a question from Christ. That is scarcely articulated hope. Do you see the variety? One asks for a word. One reaches without asking. One is carried by friends. One is approached while still explaining his limitation. If healing depended upon reproducing one emotional state, only one of these could qualify. If it depended upon one form of speech, most of them would fail. If it depended upon natural strength, the paralytic could never arrive. But faith is not a performance staged before Christ. Faith is the human response to Christ. This does not make faith meaningless. It makes its object decisive. Faith matters because it reaches toward the one who has authority. Its power does not lie in eloquence, personality, volume, or visible boldness. A trembling hand may reach the same Christ as a commanding voice. A weary man may be carried into the presence of the same Christ whom a centurion confidently addresses from afar. Therefore, do not turn another person's testimony into a law that condemns you. Do not assume that because they shouted, you must shout. Because they touched, you must touch. Because they acted instantly, your struggle has disqualified you. Learn from their trust, but do not worship their form. And do not judge the sufferer beside you. You cannot measure the heart by the volume of the voice. What appears hesitant may still be reaching. What appears silent may be depending upon the faithfulness of friends. Bring the faith you have to the Jesus who is. Faith has many voices because its strength is not in its style. Its strength is in the one it reaches. And this variety becomes even clearer when one father's urgent request is interrupted by another person's hidden suffering, and Jesus reveals what apparent delay means in his presence. Jairus comes to Jesus carrying the kind of request in which every moment feels expensive. His daughter is dying. This is not a question for another day. He needs Jesus now. Jesus goes with him. The answer has begun moving toward his house. Then the procession stops. A woman hidden in the crowd reaches for Jesus and receives what she has sought for years. For her, this interruption is the moment of restoration. For Jairus, the same moment may feel like dangerous delay. One person is watching hope arrive. Another is watching the clock. Do you see the tension? The woman approaches quietly. Jairus has made a public appeal, but she hopes to touch Jesus and disappear. He is known, visible, and waiting beside Christ. She has concealed her suffering within the crowd. Yet Jesus will not allow her to leave as an anonymous receiver of power. He stops. He calls her forward. He listens to her story. Why spend precious moments doing this when Jairus' need appears more urgent? Because Jesus is not merely correcting a condition, he is restoring a person. The woman who came hidden must leave recognized. The one who approached in fear must hear words of peace. She is not a nameless interruption in another person's miracle. She belongs within the care of God. But then the message reaches Jairus. The situation has worsened beyond human remedy. The words he feared have arrived. And fear immediately offers its interpretation. The delay cost you the answer. Someone else received what you needed. Jesus stopped for her, and now it is too late for you. Fear always interprets delay as abandonment. Jesus answers fear by directing Jairus back to trust. The ground of hope cannot be the clock, because the clock has already testified against him. It cannot be the latest report, because the report declares the matter closed. Hope must now stand upon the identity of the one still walking beside him. Jesus has not changed because the circumstances have changed. His attention to the woman is not indifference toward Jairus. Her restoration has not diminished his authority. Christ is not forced to choose which human need deserves his character, as though compassion were scarce and power could be exhausted. Perhaps you have watched another person receive the answer for which you are still waiting. Their testimony brought joy, but it also awakened a private question. Has God passed me by? Do not let another person's restoration become evidence against the faithfulness of Christ. Their story reveals what his compassion can do. It does not announce that his compassion has left you. This is where patience becomes necessary, not passive resignation, not frantic repetition, but a heart that remains steady in the presence of contradiction. Waiting beside Christ is not the same as being abandoned by Christ. You do not have to begin again every hour as though he forgot the first request. You hold your confidence, because the one who began walking with Jairus did not turn away when the news grew worse. The interruption revealed his care. It did not exhaust his authority. And these intertwined stories reveal something greater still. Jesus is not only changing physical conditions, he is restoring peace, identity, dignity, and relationship, the very things suffering tried to steal. The third discovery is this: Jesus restores what suffering tried to steal. Bodily healing matters, the pain matters, the limitation matters. Jesus never treats the body as though its suffering were imaginary or unworthy of divine attention. Yet the gospel encounters reveal damage that no instrument can measure. Sickness can burden the conscience, silence the voice, isolate the person, and gradually replace belonging with shame. Consider the paralytic whose friends carry him to Jesus. Everyone can see the obvious need. His body cannot do what others take for granted. The crowd expects Jesus to address that visible limitation, yet Jesus first speaks to forgiveness. Why? Because Christ sees what observers cannot see. He refuses to divide the man into unrelated pieces, as though his spirit mattered to God while his body did not, or his body mattered while his inner burden could be ignored. Jesus speaks to the guilt that weighs upon the heart, and then he confronts the condition that holds the body down. Forgiveness and healing are not competing acts. They reveal one Redeemer, restoring one person. Now return to the woman in the crowd. She enters hidden behind years of suffering. She hopes to receive without being seen, but Jesus will not let shame write the closing sentence of her story. He calls her into the open, not to humiliate her, but to acknowledge her. She came thinking only of her condition. She leaves, having heard peace spoken over her life. She is no longer merely the woman with the issue. She is addressed through belonging. Then consider the woman who had been bent over for many years. Jesus does not identify her by the shape affliction forced upon her. He identifies her as a daughter within God's covenant family. Others could see how long she had been bound. Jesus declared where she belonged. That language is not ornamental. It restores status. Suffering often attempts to rename you. It changes how others speak to you, then how you speak about yourself. First you say, "My body is experiencing this condition." Later you say, "This condition is my life." Finally, fear says, "This condition is who I am, and it owns my future." Refuse that progression. The body may truthfully report pain, weakness, or limitation. Faith does not require dishonesty. But the body was never appointed to determine your worth, interpret God's willingness, or deliver the final judgment concerning your future. A condition may describe what you are facing. It cannot define who you are before God. You are still seen, you are still known, you still belong. And do not call peace, dignity, and restored identity consolation prizes, as though Jesus gives them only when bodily healing is unavailable. They are part of his answer to the whole tyranny of suffering. He confronts what attacks the flesh, what wounds the heart, what isolates the person, and what distorts identity. His compassion reaches as deeply as the damage reaches. The healer does not repair an object, he restores a person. Compassion explains why Jesus draws near, but these encounters reveal another truth equally necessary for faith. When he acts, he does not act with hesitation, strain, or uncertainty. His love moves with authority. The fourth discovery is this: the actions of Jesus vary, but his authority does not. He touches the leper. He speaks across distance to the centurion. He announces forgiveness to the paralytic. He commands another man to rise. The outward action changes from scene to scene, yet each action proceeds from the same identity, the same compassion, and the same untroubled authority. Authority is not noise. A person may shout because he is uncertain. Another may speak quietly because he knows the weight behind his words. Volume does not create rank. Strain does not produce authorization. Emotional spectacle cannot add power to the person of Christ. Consider a representative carrying the authorization of someone whose name is recognized. The representative's voice may tremble. His personality may be unimpressive, but the validity of his action does not rest upon the strength of his voice. It rests upon the standing of the one who sent him. So it is with the words and actions of Jesus. His command is not powerful because the syllables form a secret arrangement. It is powerful because of who speaks. The touch is not magic. The command is not an incantation. Faith is not emotional force projected toward a problem. Every outward action receives its meaning from Christ himself. Remove his identity, and the method becomes an empty gesture. See his identity, and the variety no longer creates confusion. This is why authority and compassion must never be separated. Power without compassion appears cold. Compassion without authority appears helpless. But in Jesus, love has the ability to act, and authority has the heart to draw near. The same Jesus who notices the hidden woman confronts her affliction. The same Jesus who restores the leper's dignity commands what had isolated him to leave. The same Jesus who listens to Jairus refuses to surrender when fear announces that the situation has become impossible. His authority serves his compassion. Many believers admire the name of Jesus without trusting what that name represents. They sing it, repeat it, and place it at the end of prayer, yet continue speaking as though Christ has no present standing. But his name is not a charm attached to anxious words. It represents his character, his victory, his completed work, and his access to the Father. Therefore, when you pray through Christ, you do not approach God as a stranger attempting to awaken reluctant mercy. You come on the ground of the Son. You do not multiply words to make the Father willing. You let your request agree with the willingness already revealed in Jesus. And when you minister to another person, do not attempt to manufacture spiritual intensity. Do not confuse agitation with faith or loudness with authority. Let action arise from agreement with Christ. Speak because his word has given you confidence. Pray because his character has settled the question of welcome. Act because admiration has become trust. The method is never the source. Christ is the source. His compassion determines the direction of his power, and his authority ensures that compassion is never empty sentiment. But if that authority belongs only to scenes from long ago, we are left admiring history. We must now see that the Jesus revealed in these encounters is not merely the healer who lived, he is the healer who lives. The danger now is that you may place these encounters behind glass. You may admire the touch, honor the compassion, and rejoice over the authority, yet imagine that all of it belongs to a closed chapter of history. You may know what Jesus did and still live as though he were absent. Admiration alone cannot produce confidence in the present. But the Jesus of the encounters is the risen Christ. The one who received the outcast, answered the centurion, restored the hidden woman, and walked beside Jairus, did not surrender his ministry to the grave. He conquered death and gave believers the right to approach the Father through his name. That name carries the standing of the living Son. To use his name, therefore, is not to attach a sacred expression to the end of an uncertain prayer. It is to come upon the ground of who he is, what he accomplished, and the access he established. You do not make his name authoritative by shouting it. You do not strengthen it through repetition. You trust the rank, victory, and character already contained in the living Christ. And the revelation goes further. Romans 8 declares that the Spirit who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in the believer and gives life to the mortal body. Notice the present reality. The Spirit dwells in you. Divine life is not merely waiting beyond death. Resurrection life has already entered the believer's experience. This does not mean mortality has become invisible. It does not mean the body never reports weakness or pain. It means another power is present, one that did not originate in human biology, emotional effort, or natural strength. Think of two laws operating in the same field. Gravity continues to pull an aircraft downward, yet the law of lift enables it to rise. The lower law has not ceased to exist, but it no longer possesses the only word concerning the aircraft's movement. So it is with the law of the Spirit of life. Weakness may be visible. Symptoms may speak. The natural report may describe a genuine condition, but resurrection life introduces a higher authority. The body may supply information. It cannot determine spiritual truth. Faith does not deny the report. Faith denies the report the right to become the highest court of appeal. Do you see the identity reversal? You are not an abandoned sufferer attempting to summon distant power. In Christ, you come as a child to the Father. By the Spirit, you are a dwelling place of divine life. You are not trying to persuade Jesus to become the healer revealed in the Gospels. You are learning to trust the living healer he already is. Yet, an unrecognized possession may remain unused. An heir can live beneath his inheritance until his understanding is opened. This is why revelation matters. When you recognize Christ's standing, your prayer changes. When you recognize the indwelling Spirit, your language changes. When you recognize your access to the Father, anxious striving gives way to gratitude, confidence, and obedient action. Make this truth personal. The healer lives. His name retains its authority. His Spirit is present. His character has not become a relic, and his compassion has not expired. The question now becomes practical. If seeing the healer is the foundation of faith, how should these encounters reshape the way you read, pray, speak, and respond each day? Now gather the 4 discoveries into one clear vision. Jesus sees the person beneath the condition. He receives faith, whether it speaks boldly, reaches quietly, arrives through friends, or barely knows how to ask. He restores what suffering tried to steal from the body, the heart, and the person's place of belonging, and he acts with compassion joined to authority. This is the healer, whom faith encounters. So when you open another healing account, do not rush to extract a formula. First, ask what the sufferer fears. Is it rejection, delay, shame, helplessness, or the belief that hope has arrived too late? Then observe what Jesus notices. Listen to what he says. Watch what he does. Ask what his response reveals about the Father, and carry that revelation into your own prayer. Before you ask only for changed circumstances, ask for enlightened understanding. Father, open my eyes to know the character of Christ, the inheritance established in him, and the life your Spirit has placed within me. Revelation does not replace faith. It gives faith something solid upon which to stand. When anxiety asks whether you use the right words, remember who Jesus is. When fear says you did not feel enough confidence, remember the trembling woman who still reached him. When delay whispers that you have been forgotten, remember Jairus walking beside Christ after the report had grown worse. When shame identifies you by your condition, remember the people whom Jesus addressed through dignity and belonging. Return to the healer. This does not require you to deny what the body reports. You may acknowledge pain without enthroning it. You may describe a condition without receiving it as your identity. You may face the present honestly without permitting fear to write the conclusion. The body can tell you what it feels. It cannot tell you what Christ is like. Approach the Father through Jesus' name, not as a stranger trying to earn attention, but as a child whose access rests upon the Son. Give thanks for the welcome already revealed. Ask with confidence. Then remain steady. Do not begin again from panic every time circumstances speak. Let patience extend your faith beyond the moment of prayer. Make these truths personal. Christ sees me. Christ receives me. Christ has not forgotten me. His life is present with me. Say them not as a charm, but as agreement with what the encounters have revealed. Let your prayer, your language, and your conduct answer to that revelation. We began with 2 people reading the same miracle. One left carrying a technique, something to copy, measure, and fear getting wrong. The other left knowing the healer. When pressure came, the technique could be questioned, but the character of Jesus remained. Read the encounters again. This time, do not ask only, how can I reproduce this result? Ask, what does this reveal about the living Christ? Then believe what you see. Thank him for who he is. Approach the Father through him. Stand in the presence of contradiction without surrendering his character to your fear. The deepest foundation of healing faith is not confidence in your method. It is confidence in Jesus Christ,